This is Feeling Loudly, a podcast about the power of emotion, explored through the lens of astrology, divination, and music. I'm Jana Barrett, an astrologer, diviner, poet, and witch, and I'm here to help you feel your feels and discover your depths. Hi, and welcome, friends, to Season 6, Episode 2. Today, we're going to be talking about the Nine of Wands and the concept of power. And this episode is part of our ongoing series where we explore a particular tarot card paired with an oracle card and discuss it in the context of life and feelings and humanity and love and relationships and all of that stuff. Before we get into our episode today, I want to call out some updates happening on my side of things. First, I have rolled out 8 new astrology readings. I've moved away from just offering generic readings based on the amount of time that you want to spend with me. And now all of my astrology readings are either 90 minutes or 60 minutes. And I have 4 intro readings for folks who are new to working with me. So new clients can book any of those 4 readings. And then return astrology clients can book any of my 8 readings. And to give you some examples, I have a relationship reading that's focused on exploring particular relationship patterns and tricky, sticky things that you've come up against in your connections of all kinds. And we'll look at it through the lens of your natal chart to see what's up and to find some pathways toward deeper connection and intimacy for you that honor your nature, your needs, your desires. I have a very similar one, but for career, and that's more geared toward people who want to either shift careers or enhance their existing career path and make it more fulfilling and pleasurable and meaningful. And again, through the context of their natal chart, discovering what turns your light on and what helps it stay on and what helps you feel like the work you're doing is meaningful and sustainable. I also have 2 more kind of like, what's the adjective I want here? I don't know what adjective I want, but I have one that's particularly for people who are going through big transformations or on the brink of some type of transformation. So that could look like a breakup, a breakthrough, a quitting, a moving, a rebuilding situation, any type of crossroads that you might be facing where you're needing support, energetic support, spiritual support, grounded support from a human who can offer space and compassion and 90 minutes for you to process what's coming up and what you want and use that as an opportunity to get aligned, because I really see those moments as like hugely powerful, to use our card of the day today, hugely powerful in laying the foundation for the next chapter of our lives. And although going through tower moments and moments of crumbling can feel really scary and overwhelming, there are also these really important gateways into new ways of living that feel more aligned and true to us. And it's often in those moments when we get to make pretty radical choices and be radically honest with ourselves. So I love supporting people in moments like that. I've gone through many moments like that myself, and it's just really fulfilling. And so that's another option for you. And then I've got others that you can explore. They're linked out in the notes on this episode today. More niche ones in particular for my return clients who can dig deeper into particular elements of the chart in the context of healing, of empowerment, of like visionary capabilities, finding the visionary within you and within your chart and other stuff like that, that I think is pretty fun and exciting. And I can't wait to read for you guys in more of this focused capacity. I think it's going to bring a lot to life that maybe just more open-ended readings don't quite nail, at least in my experience. So check them out if you're interested. You can use the code POD10 to take 10% off of your reading with me. So if you're a listener of this podcast and you have not used a coupon code to book a reading with me before, you are welcome to use that. And you can also sign up for my newsletter to get a coupon code over there. So whichever one appeals to you. Okay, so that's the big one. The second piece that is maybe not relevant for all of you listening here, but for those of you who do follow me on social media, specifically on Instagram and Threads, I am going to be leaving Meta by the end of 2024. I made this choice within the last few weeks. I've been sitting on it for a long time. And I've taken many breaks from social this year already, and they're always really great and like critical for my well-being. And I noticed that when I come back, I very easily fall back into patterns and feel kind of just continually exploited by meta platforms. I mean, they are deeply exploitative, and especially for creators who they're not paying any money to feed their algorithm and feed them content. So there are many other issues with Meta, obviously, and I'm sure you guys are aware of that stuff. And there are just so many compiling reasons for me to leave these platforms behind. And it's honestly kind of a tough move for me because I was just beginning to gain traction. I have like on Threads, I have more followers than I've ever had on any platform before. I've never had like a lot of followers, and that was a new experience, and it was interesting and cool, and also like really overwhelming at times, and kind of kept me hooked in. And I noticed that I was giving a lot of myself to these platforms. And although I love many of the fellow creators and astrologers and readers and humans that I've met on these platforms, and they've helped my business in a big way, it's coming time for me to just make a really deliberate choice to invest in other places and to pull back all of that energy and halt the momentum there and like redirect that to other places that I feel are more aligned with my business and my values and what I'm trying to build here. So that means I'll be writing more. I'm going to be, in addition to contributing on an ongoing basis to the Astrophile Substack that I collaborate on with Amanda Moreno and Amanda Painter. Um, and if you have not subscribed to the Astrophile, I recommend it. I think it's pretty awesome. The three of us team up, and each of us publishes about an article a month, sometimes a little more. And it's just really delicious, topical astrology that's grounded and real and often very heartfelt. And I'm really cheered by the type of work that we've been publishing on there. I think it's kind of lovely. So that's an option if you want to go deeper. The Astrophile Substack, and I'm also going to be launching my personal Substack, Feeling Loudly, will be by the same name. And that is going to happen quite soon. It's already alive. It just doesn't have any content on it. But if you want to preemptively go ahead and follow me over there, you can. I'll be releasing subscriptions soon and just gating particular content, but there will be free content for everyone. And if you decide that you want to sign up for a paid subscription to support my writing and to get more of that, you'll have the option to upgrade whenever you want. I will be staying on YouTube and TikTok and continuing to post readings there. I just posted a pick a card reading within the last 2 weeks about how to let go. That was my first public pick a card reading in a long time, and that is live on YouTube. And then I also just published our September forecast for Patreon, and that's available at the Sun tier and up. So $9 and up gets you access to our monthly forecasts, which include a collective reading combining the Akashic Records and Tarot. And those also feature pick a card readings with more personalized predictions. So if you want to get more of a personal lens on the months to come, you get like the collective reading, and then you also get one, there are three groups. So it divides my patrons in three, and that offers more personalization. So check that out if you would like. I'm also going to be publishing a Patreon only pick a card reading soon, and a lot of other good stuff. Our group reading is coming up later next month. And yeah, there's always a lot of content flowing over there. So if you value this podcast and you feel like you get good support and guidance and nourishment from it, and you feel like supporting me and also getting a whole lot more, that is the best way to work with me. You also get discounts on my one-on-one services. My rising tier people get 30% off readings with me, and that includes recorded readings, recorded tarot readings. So it's a pretty sweet deal. And the lower tiers get 10% and 20% respectively at the sun and moon tiers. So you're getting a pretty hefty discount no matter what you sign up for, and that applies to all of my live readings and all of my recorded tarot readings. The last thing, I know this is a really long intro today, but the last thing that I want to mention before I dive in is that I'm hosting quite a few events in Discord this month, including an eclipse dance party. So we're going to be having kind of like an ecstatic dance, cameras on or off, whatever your preference. I'm going to be making a playlist and DJing, and it's going to be leading us right up to the eclipse on September 17th. And so that it's a Pisces eclipse. It's the first eclipse on the Pisces Virgo axis, a North Node eclipse. And it's, I think, going to be a really special way to move into that energy. Pisces is a sign that is rooted in flow and impermanence. And I think that like dancing our way into this eclipse is such an lovely way to honor it and to feel into that energy. So we'll stop dancing like 2 or 3 minutes before the eclipses or before the full moon is exact, and we will welcome it in, and that'll be that, and it'll be really special. So you can come and sign up for that. And then I also tomorrow, if you happen to listen to this before September 1st, tomorrow I'm hosting our monthly visioning session where we gather and visualize a day in the life in the future. And it can be kind of like a sweet ritual to help us root in what we want and set intentions, especially leading up to this Virgo new moon. Okay, that was 12 minutes of talking. Ooh, wow, I think that's my longest intro yet. So applause, please. Thank you. Let's get into our episode for the day. As I mentioned at the top, our tarot card for this episode is the Nine of Wands, and our oracle card is Power. So I want to start by reading some keywords from the Lillifer Tarot Guidebook on the Nine of Wands, and then I'll read you the Power description, and then we will start exploring and see what comes up. So, Nine of Wands, upright keywords: resilience, holding on to achievements, recognition, strength, grit, delimitation, last stand, prudence due to past experiences, enemies lying in wait. And then reversed keywords, we have resistance, exhaustion, questioning motivations, reluctance, close-mindedness, loss of energy, a setback, and moving ahead slowly. This card is connected to Sagittarius and the moon and Sagittarius. And this depiction in particular has one of our usual, like, kind of otherworldly creatures, and they are naked and red, and they have a crescent moon above their head, and they're holding one wand up in the air, and there are sparks kind of flying off the end of that wand. And then another wand is down, like in front of their legs, and they're holding it. So they have one arm up and one arm down. And they have this pretty fierce expression on their face, but it's also calm. It's like there is power. This is like a power pose that they're holding here. There are these leaves or sort of like vines that are surrounding them, and what look like flames that are coming up from the earth and from the other wands, the other 7 wands, which are positioned almost in like the shape of what would we call this? The shape of like a half circle or like a rainbow. Like, sticking out, and you'll see if you go check out the photo on Instagram. And then we have clouds overhead. And so when I look at this card and when I feel it, I actually feel a calm power, but there's also a posture to it. It's like this person is standing at attention and they're looking straight at me. Like their eyes are on me. And it's almost like they're not necessarily showing off, but it is a display of power. And the Nine of Wands can be this card of the warrior, this card of someone who has fought, who's gone on a long, long journey and has arrived at this place where they're almost ready to complete this journey that they've been on. But it's been fierce, it's been tiresome, it's been even like full of pain and agony and challenges and competition, rivalry, and often the wands connected to fire, the element of fire, can be the pathway, the element that brings us into our sort of like Martian drive and energy and even ego, we might say. And it's something that also really taps us into our willpower, our drive, our motivation, our inspiration, and our spirituality. The wands and fire itself can be deeply spiritual in nature. If you think about it as sort of the sacred flame and the way that flame itself is life-giving. And when I look at the flames underneath this figure as they're holding up these wands, I feel so much heat. Like literally, my body feels hot right now. And that's partially because I just turned off the AC so I could record without the noise in the background. But it's also partially that, like, this is a card that is hot. Like, it can feel like you've just come out of battle or like you're in a battle. And that is more apt for the Nine of Wands, that it is sort of like a last stand kind of energy at times where it's like we have to gather our strength, we have to gather our courage, and we face something. And there's an implicit trust in our power and faith in ourselves to be able to overcome obstacles. So that brings me into our oracle card, which is power. And we, with this one, also have flames. There's a hand that's pictured. You can see like the front of a hand pointing down, and there's stars that are like just like a, you know, inch away from the tips of their fingers. And then we actually have flames pictured, and they almost look like wings, and they're kind of up at the top where the wrist would be if there were a wrist in this. We have a sun, we have a moon, we have stars all around, we have flowers, and we have this little figure that appears to be riding some type of like lightning bolt or something. And so the hand is big, like it's a big palm. And it's rounded, and it has this sort of like it's almost I mean, it's not a literal depiction of a hand, but it's literal enough. But there's this sort of like gravitas to it. Like it's a hefty hand. It feels strong, it feels big. And I'm thinking about how now that I look over at the Nine of Wands, there's also hands are emphasized. We can see their fingers wrapping around these wands. And the sort of like power that it takes to hold fire and to use fire and to allow it to flow through you and to use heat. And for a lot of people, that's a scary thing. You know, fire can cause damage. It can I'm right now sitting in the Pacific Northwest in my home, and the sky is orange. Well, not right now because there are clouds overhead. But not too long ago, the sky was orange, and actually, like, the tone or the tint of the light that's coming into my windows is orange and brown and red and gold, and that's because there are massive wildfires happening, and the air has been filled with smoke for days, and we had a break for a little bit where the air quality wasn't so bad, and then, it got really, really bad again. And it's hot. It's like 90 something today. And so that combination of the smoke and the heat is really bringing me into the vibe of the Nine of Wands today. Like the conditions are hot, the conditions are inflamed, the conditions feel tense, and they feel provocative in a way. And it causes us, if you're a person who's just walking around outside, there are some people wearing masks. There are some people who are just like barely leaving the house. I've been doing really short walks. I have to walk my dog, Poppy. And so we go outside like 4 times a day to go on walks, but the walks are shorter. And a lot of it is like, okay, awareness of the fact that our world is on fire. And that can feel really overwhelming at times. There's a lot of grief that comes up for me and for a lot of people with wildfires, and it's really a heartbreaking thing to witness. And if you're in the Pacific Northwest, it's something that I'm sure you know well, is that it's kind of a part of life now, is expecting that our our world will catch fire. And that can lead at times to a sort of like bracing feeling. Like you'll hear people in this region kind of talking about the buildup to summer when it's coming, with this mixed, bittersweet energy of excitement, looking forward to the beauty of being in the Pacific Northwest during the summer. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's so like otherworldly beautiful and magical. And yet that's mixed with this premature grief and fear often, and anxiety around the fact that fires are very likely, if not at this point, kind of inevitable, and that weeks of smoke are kind of just to be expected. And so that causes us to shift and to make different choices, because we're expecting tension, we're expecting conflict between the elements of the earth and our presence here and what our presence has caused. And so it's kind of, I mean, I haven't even read the power card yet. I was getting there, but I got distracted with this little sidebar here. But I think the reason that I'm going into this is because the card here is quite literally depicting the earth on fire. Like, I look at this card and there is plant life, there's like vegetation that's in the flames, and the flame is coming up from the earth itself. And so I think about the agony of the earth and the rage of the earth and the way that the earth in its own way expresses emotion, and how fire, the element of fire and literal fires, can be this sort of rage that gets expressed when a boundary is crossed, when an environment is violated, when our our literal the earth that we stand on is abused or misused in some way. And how that reaction is something that we've come to expect, and that's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. I want to pull back a little bit, because I know when I talk about this stuff, or when anyone talks about this stuff, it can be activating for people. And especially like as we tap into the emotion of anger, it can have a similar feeling. Anger and anxiety and heat can have a really anxious effect on a lot of people. And it's complicated, I think, for a lot of us who have experienced a lot of suffering in our lives, and may or may not have tapped into our well of anger and allowed that to breathe. And so when things happen in our environment that are fiery and hot and explosive, it can be complicated to be exposed to the sort of like 3D manifestation of the emotions that are maybe suppressed or hidden within us. And it's also just scary. So I want to just kind of recognize that like this can be difficult territory. And I don't expect that this episode needs like a trigger warning per se, but I don't know. We'll see where we get. But anyway, very long tangent to bring me to our power card. And in the guidebook, power says, "Power is showing up when nobody asked me to. It's joining the conversation. It's knowing dreams come true when I get behind the wheel. Power is feeling safe in my ability to face the obstacles in front of me. I am most powerful when I trust completely." So it brings me back to this person's face or this figure's face on the Nine of Wands and how, like, they are standing in the flames and they have those 9 wands below them, but it's like, this is a real show of strength. Like, if this were a real, let's say, human, this person would be catching fire. They're literally standing in the flames that are coming from the wands, which are sort of acting as like firewood in this case. And now that I look even more closely at it, I can see that there are actually individual flames coming off of each wand. And so I think about how much creative potential actually exists within the Nine of Wands. If we think about the wands as creative energy or fire as creative energy, and how our hands can also be these channels of creativity and communication. And so with the hands emphasized on the power card paired with the really like visceral flames and hotness, heat of this Nine of Wands, it's like these these wands and this fire is actually clearing the way towards something that needs to be seen. And it's got me thinking about how truth and the sharing of truth, of courageous truth, specifically truths that might be hard to share, to utter, to speak, to hold within us, and to see how that is such an expression of power, is to be able to articulate difficult truths. And this concept of truth telling and truth speaking has been really on my radar, especially this year, it feels like. And it kind of maybe is telling me a bit why I felt the need to talk about the social media stuff earlier. Um, One thing that's been hard for me is that as someone who has a natal Mercury Pluto opposition and a 12th house Mercury retrograde, that can experience a lot of projection, but also often tap into a lot of undertones and undercurrents. And then with that Pluto opposition can like dig in a way that can be provocative and in a way that can be uncomfortable. Um, Paired with my Aquarius midheaven and North Node, I have this tendency to like want to I'm magnetically drawn to talking about things that I feel people are in denial of, or talking about things that I feel people are collectively, unconsciously agreeing to in a sort of like groupthink dynamic without deeper thought and consideration. And I appreciate this quality within myself. And also, it's really difficult at times. It's really uncomfortable at times because I feel it. It's almost like this soul drive to like speak to shit and to say it. And I think there are other parts of my chart and my life experience in general that lend to that. But it's a difficult thing to do when there is not a sort of like shared community space of agreed upon respect and relative safety. And when you're on social media, that is not a thing. You don't have the sort of, unless you're like a private account that's really curated your feed and your connections, you don't have the sort of like insular comfort of sharing things and having people who know you take that in without immediately jumping into reactivity. And so that's been a struggle for me on threads in particular. And it's something I've really had to learn how to soothe myself through and also how to abstain from doing when I'm not in a place to have challenging conversations and challenging interactions with strangers online. Because I've gotten into some heated conversations with people on threads, and I've gotten a lot of very heated comments from people after I shared something that landed wrong for them or that scratched at something that was uncomfortable, or that they just, flat out disagreed with. And it's helped me in a lot of ways to help me like build up my courage and my threshold for conflict and my threshold for discomfort, which we talked about in our last episode, the temperance episode. And at times, it's caused that inflammation knob to turn up too high and to become a sort of outlet for anger and rage, as social media can so often be. Where if I were in a bad mood or if I were like feeling like this deeper anger or deeper pain was activated in me somehow, at times I would turn to threads and post something provocative that was more of like a hot take, like an incendiary take, and would almost like get it out of my system in that way. And then of course, that's generally not going to go super well. And there I think hot take culture can be a mess, and like I had to check myself and check my ego on that and check like why I was so tempted to post stuff that would provoke. Was I doing it in order to provoke people, or was there like a deeper, more grounded impulse there that needed honoring? And often it was both, right? Like it can be both. But it's something that I'm thinking about because I mentioned it earlier and because now I'm looking at this heat and I'm looking at this like the sort of confrontational quality that the Nine of Wands can have, and how when we're in Nine of Wands energy, we have to, or at least, we can do whatever the fuck we want, but it's advisable, it's healthy, it's smart to check in with ourselves and ask, where is this coming from? And how am I using my power? Where is this coming from? And how am I using my power in this moment? Because the Nine of Wands is a power card, big time. And people often talk about it as like the wounded warrior, someone who's really been through it. And it's a card of resilience and strength and showing up and showing out and having faith and confidence within yourself and within your own power. And yet, when that volume knob again gets turned up really high, it can turn into abuses of power. It can turn into overdoing it. It can turn into conflict for conflict's sake. It can turn into like egoic expressions of that power where we try to like overrun people or dominate people or battle with people just because there's something that's pushing us like really hard to fight. And there's something that gets turned on within us, that sort of rage button that gets activated. And often that's maybe trying to off gas something within us that does really need attention, but we might be trying to off gas it through these like micro conflicts or micro moments of like flexing or showing off or doing something that's like, ugh. You can't see me, but I'm like flexing my biceps. And so it's a fine line, and it's something that I think all humans at different points in their lives cross and cross back over and have to reckon with. And some of us are maybe more predisposed to having to reckon with that. Like I'm a Leo moon, square Pluto. That's a big T square for me with that Sun and Mercury opposition to Pluto. And so me needing to ask myself, like, where is this coming from? What is the deeper desire here? And do that sort of self inventory is really important for me, because if I don't, I can just be an asshole. And I don't like being an asshole. And I've definitely been an asshole at times, especially online, especially when I was having a bad day, especially when I was angry about something or hurt by something or needing something and not knowing how to get that need met. And so I I think partially going into this online stuff because like it's something that most of us share these days. I think most of us are online in some way. Most of us are on some form of social media. Most of us are connected to people in community spaces or in one-on-one relationships where tension is inevitable and conflict is inevitable. And doing those check-ins with ourselves and grounding and like coming back to the literal earth and breathing and finding ways to center ourselves and to reconnect with something bigger than our own flame and our own fire is really important. lest we become a forest fire and inflame and set fire to a whole bunch of other shit in our path. So the 9 of Wands, like all other cards in the tarot, is not a bad card, and it's not something to be feared or to be uh, considered like purely through the lens of like self-judgment or self-criticism or navel gazing. Like, this isn't to me a card that comes up where I'm like, oh, check your ego, or oh, like, careful you're not like overdoing it. Um, it's a card that has immense strength and power, and also it can operate in that way, and it can begin to overtake and overrun if it's not tempered with groundedness. So that brings me into our song. What is our song today? Our song is Clouds by Park Hae Shin and No Saj Thing. And this song is actually in Korean. And so I had to look up the English translation, and I'm going to read the English translation to you. Everything flies to that far away. Everything flies into the sky. Everything flies. I'm going to fly all the way up to that faraway place. I fly higher beyond the world, out of space. Everything's okay. I'm standing here for you. Draw who I want to see and call out your name loudly. I fly away, build a little house in in the sky far away. I invite you, transcending the time and space of our own. Wind pushes harder, harder. Clouds embrace us to your heart's content, so no one's going to find us. Everything flies to that far away. Everything flies into the sky. So I had to like really chew on this for a little bit, and I'm chewing on it again now that we've explored the cards and I'm connecting it to the messages in the song. There's this feeling that like, obviously it's a journey, right? They're talking about flying far away into the sky and rebuilding somewhere. I fly away, build a little house in the sky far away. I invite you, transcending the time and space of our own. So there's also kind of a quality of escapism here. Like, it's fantastical, it's surreal, and they're flying away from maybe Earth or wherever it is that they reside with this other person that they're speaking to. And they're moving toward the clouds, and they actually name transcendence. I invite you, transcending the time and space of our own. And then they're actually connecting to these elements too, like the wind, like the air, like the sky, the wind, the clouds. And they say, so no one's going to find us. Clouds embrace us to your heart's content. Wind pushes us harder, harder. Everything flies to that far away. Everything flies into the sky. The symbolism of clouds has been coming up a lot, like a lot, a lot. I was just watching a Thich Nhat Hanh video on Instagram the other day, and it was Thich Nhat Hanh talking to this little girl who asked him a question about how to move through the grief of her dog who had died, of the grief of her dog dying, and how to be with the grief and process that and let go of the sadness. And he gave her this metaphor of a cloud and how you can connect with a cloud and see a cloud and love a cloud. And when that cloud changes shape or, travels out of your view, you don't say that cloud has died, but you accept that that cloud has changed form and that that cloud has maybe shifted into another cloud and has taken on a new shape, or that cloud has turned into rain and that rain falls on the ground and helps the plants grow, and it ends up in your cup of tea that you drink, and you get to experience that cloud in a different form. And he gave her that as a lesson, a really beautiful and sweet lesson for a kiddo in impermanence and in release and loss, and how we can cling to the current form and the current way that things are and experience a lot of suffering in that. Or we can recognize that impermanence is a reality in life and that loss and endings are a reality in life, but that everything becomes something else. And so I kind of wonder, like, the video is very old. I think that that little girl is like a teenager or adult now and commented on it and was like, "This is me." It was cute. But I was thinking about how, like, wow, damn, first of all, badass to be able to get advice from Thich Nhat Hanh when you're a kid about how to grieve the loss of your dog and feel your feelings and move on. And also, like, how moments of grief and loss can be these markers or these lines in the sand where we make different choices about how we're going to move forward. And painful moments, suffering, various forms of trauma that we experience can be these markers that create new pathways and new behaviors for us when we experience them. And they can set the tone for the way that we engage with life and the way that we engage with other similar experiences down the line. And I was just kind of wondering to myself, like, I wonder how that little human moved along in life with that advice, and if they applied that in the grieving of their dog, and if they found peace in that, and if they applied that when they had their first breakup, or when they had like their first major heartbreak or ending, or when they lost a grandparent, and how moments like that, when we're in pain and when we receive wisdom and when we apply that wisdom, how that can really change the trajectory of our life going forward because it becomes integrated into us. And similarly, when we don't have support or guidance, or when we just don't have the wherewithal to navigate a difficult situation with that sort of wisdom, we can often experience added pain because we get sort of stuck in that position of locked in suffering. And the coming back to the definition of the 9 of wands, as as a lot of readers describe it, as the wounded warrior, as someone who's really been through it, been through the mud, been through the war, and is like, "I can do it." Like, last stand, like, I've made it through, I have to be resilient, I have to finish this journey. That can be this moment where we gather our strength and we center ourselves. And sometimes it can be a moment where like overkill comes in, where all of the rage and all of the pain ends up channeling into abuse or into like violence that is beyond the realm of what's necessary or humane. And it's how often pain proliferates in the world is when these moments create ruptures within us, and then we carry on a legacy of pain and begin to harm other people in the way that we've been harmed. And so it can compel us at times to cope with that in different ways. Like maybe some of us lean into that and we become really hostile and violent and aggressive and even hateful. Other people might choose more of like the energy in the song. Like there's this sort of escapist quality to it. Like no one's going to see us. We're going to fly away into the sky and escape into a faraway place. And then there's this sort of presence and wisdom and acceptance that comes with that Thich Nhat Hanh example, where we accept that whatever's occurring right now is not going to last forever. And it's something that is here for us and maybe even has something to teach us. And maybe our suffering and our pain can teach us something in this moment and can be something that helps us also move deeper into love. You know, grief being, I think, one of the highest expressions of love. And the way that we love after loss is often in the form of grief. And so, coming back and closing out on the energy of power once more, I think that that ability to move through experiences of pain and to apply, what am I trying to get at here? It's like the ability to move through these experiences and even to choose to stay in compassion. The ability to move through pain and to keep our hearts open, to keep our love accessible and flowing, to stay open-hearted in the world after we experience loss and pain. To me, that is incredible power. It takes such oh my god, it takes so much power and courage for people who have loved and lost in profound ways, or for people who have experienced really horrific things at the hands of others or just at the hands of their lives. It takes incredible power and courage to keep going and to keep loving and to keep opening up and to trust yourself through that process. And it's often something that takes us many, many years to get to a place where we can be open-hearted again after a lot of loss and after a lot of pain. And that's not a reflection of our worth or our value or even our wisdom. It's just that healing, as they say, is not linear. And we get there when we get there on our own timetable and at our own pace. And there's a lot of wisdom that can come from the experiences of not getting there too. There's a lot of wisdom that comes from acting out our pain and from doing things that we might later regret or that we might later feel kind of shitty about. And those can be really teachable moments and moments that open our eyes and that hopefully can also bring us into deeper self-compassion because we all make mistakes. We all have egos, and that's not something to be killed or to be gotten rid of. It's something that keeps us alive. And that is very much Nine of Wands energy is like this flame has kept me alive. And sometimes it begins to cause me pain, and I might burn myself or burn other people. And power is being able to have that awareness, to come back to it, to be compassionate toward yourself, and to make different choices, and to tend to the part of you that feels scared, that feels angry, that feels hurt, and to keep opening up and to keep choosing to trust yourself in spite of everything around you that might tell you not to, or the people that might not want you to, because that would be too powerful to trust yourself. But self-trust is incredible power. It's there's a reason that, like, gaslighting is something that is such a common tactic among abusers and abusive regimes and systems, is that when you cause someone to not trust themselves, you diminish their power in the process. And when you cause someone to go into that cycle and loop of self-questioning and self-doubt, it kind of causes them to tie themselves up in a knot that you're pulling the strings of, and that can lead to disempowerment. And so the more we can practice trusting ourselves and the more we can practice trusting our relationship with our senses, with our intuition, with our guides, and with the earth, trusting, listening, being tuned in, the harder it is to fuck with us, the harder it is to manipulate us, the harder it is to pull the wool over our eyes. And it gets easier to stay in self trust and to confront difficult truths, coming back to that initial message of the episode, to face truths that might feel scary, but that also free us, and to question the way of the group, to question things that are accepted as truth. And when we can see through the veil, that illuminates our own power. Our power is like cutting through the nonsense and cutting through the clouds overhead. Speaking of clouds, different approach here, but it's like cutting through the illusion to get to the truth. So, that's all for today. I hope this resonates. I'm always here for your thoughts and your reflections, and love when people share in Discord or over email or whatever. So feel free to send my way. If you have thoughts, if you would like to submit a question for our next Ask Me Anything episode, you can also do that. There is a link. If you're listening on Spotify, if you go to the show notes, there's a question where you can submit a question to me. You're also welcome to email me via my contact form on my website. So that's feelingloudly.com/contact. And those are the two best ways to submit questions and to share feedback, really. Otherwise, I hope to see some of you at our September events. And if you'd like to hear about other stuff that's coming up, make sure to sign up for my newsletter, the Moon Letter. It goes out on the new and full moon, and you can find the link down below in the show notes. Thank you, humans. I'll talk to you soon.